Even though it's been hinted at and the information leaked for decades. The disclosure that humanity has actually been in contact with other species sent pretty much the entire world into panic. Some claim that they're simply demons, but seeing that this is not the case, many of the cults around the world simply uprooted, as whatever little argument they had really didn't matter anymore. Unfortunately, this also caused the creation of other cults, many of which stated that humanity above all. Those were the ones who were the loudest, and they were only quelled from the fact that it was noted that no non humans would enter this planet. Though there could be trade or something like that, that's as far as it would go. Eventually, humanity did calm down and does what it does best: it adapted. It understood the new paradigm, and everybody just kind of had to roll with it, even though there was random acts of violence around the globe. With this adaptation, the understanding of the quantum gateways was something everyone had to adopt. The quantum gateways are actually on the planet, must be actually anchored to the planet itself in order to work, as it uses the planet's own gravitational field to actually function. But when they are on, it allows for instantaneous transport between planets. It does take some getting used to, and most do simply barf their guts out the first time, as is a pretty strong jolt if you're not ready for it. But with the influx of tech being passed between species back and forth, barter actually returned. Barter for this technology, barter for other items as well. And because of that, only certain coins or bullion were actually traded as currency. This made everybody have to wonder how the world was going to handle, as they had to switch over from the standard rupees and dollars and whatever else you want to call your currency pretty much evaporated into nothing. Even those that actually had gold, silver, platinum, and things of that nature found out really quick that the price of these dropped into the floor. And because of that, there was again another round of violence as everybody wondered how they were going to survive. Then again, once the new technology came in, that became pretty obvious how they're going to survive. If one wanted to trade, barter in any type of currency, only certain heavy metals were able to meet this requirement, as making these is very expensive. The metals themselves are actually difficult to produce as well, and none of them are a natural metal themselves, which meant they're absolutely perfect for trading. Along with trading, there's tourism. And these two industries became the largest on all planets. With the collapse of the pharmaceutical industry, there's other major shifts as well. That meant that the tourism of other species coming in, though they had to be protected at first to make sure the Earth first and human above all groups wouldn't simply come down on them like a hammer of God, eventually everybody got used to seeing them around different areas. Those not in the tourism industry immediately started to do something they could trade for. They began to raise and grow products that were in high demand. In particular, things like strawberries, cherries, any type of fruit trees that were high in sugar were definitely sought after. However, certain species like things a little more bland. As it turns out, potatoes are definitely desired, and wheat was easy to sell by the ton. However, this caused some issues as well, as unfortunately sharecropping came back. Sharecropping simply meant that you do not own the land, you do not own the equipment. You simply grow the crops, and someone who owns it shares it with you, and they'll decide how much they want to share with you. Not a very good system for anybody, but it was what took over, as the super rich still had control on most of the major farmlands in the world. Those that didn't understand or know their history were simply told, look at all the technology you have to enjoy, you should be happy, even though you actually own nothing. When the realization comes into anyone, when they realize that they own nothing, nothing they hold, nothing they sleep on, nothing that's there, they're told that everybody else has the responsibility. And you don't have to worry about responsibility. That's our problem, which of course pissed off anybody who is a landowner. As each of these personnel, all of these super rich, tried desperately to grab a hold of any and all property, they understood that land was the one thing that could not be traded away, and they wanted that as a commodity above everything else. And actual landowners became elites. Even with just 10 hectares of land, that was enough to grow crops that you could sell, grow animals that you could sell, and sell these to other species that do not enjoy the fabricated food that comes from a molecular assembler. Even though health wise, one could say that the food created from the assembler is actually cleaner. There's no parts, there's no insect, anything that might be able to get into it during the process. However, there's always a call for the real thing. It doesn't matter what product you look at. One of these families' houses actually sat on 60 acres of land, not all of which was tillable, not all of it was farmable. However, some of it was definitely huntable. With the new tech making human life expectancy, well, forever, the patriarch was the one who actually watched over this farm. He had actually forgotten how old he is, as he walks around looking no more than about 25 years old, and he simply handles the land. The family shows up every once in a while for planting and harvesting season, but aside from that, he's almost always by himself. On a day like any other, he just finishing up feeding all the animals and was about to pull some of the vegetables out of the garden as it's coming in season, and his device chirps at him, a strange old tone that he had almost forgot. He pulled out his device and he looked, and it said the Gresfell homeworld has a major ecological event. Looking close, it's clear that a rogue meteor had actually struck their home planet. This would be enough to scare anybody, but it only devastated the local area, as the meteor itself actually did not have enough to end the entire planet. However, the sudden impact caused many of the volcanic areas to become active once again. This caused eruptions, causing all sorts of matter to be sprayed up into the air, causing pyroclastic flows, magma flows, and everything else. The patriarch thought to himself, the Gresfell, they're a humanoid species. They're actually a very advanced species. They're actually one of the few that has achieved true space flight. He also thought about the genetically designed populace. Is not a single child born on that planet in the last several hundred years, he wagers, has not been genetically manipulated in one way, shape, or form. And then he grins for just a moment, thinking how pleasurable they are to the eye. In fact, it's noted that most teenage males will sit there and just about drool, while many of the teenage females of Earth that see that population will simply get shy and giddy and sometimes squirm due to their high tech and the fact that they're very pleasant to look at. The Gresfell homeworld is actually one of the most highly visited tourist destinations in the entire known universe, and nobody would want them to go to shit. However, that's when the patriarch realized something, and he understood the situation. He understood the assignment, and he immediately knew what he needed to do. He hooked up his trailer and backed it up to the basement and began to pull out different cases, latching them down to the trailer itself. These large cases he was pulling out and rolling them onto the trailer were action packed with medical supplies, camping supplies, emergency food, backup power supplies, and more. He has it hooked up to his truck and is heading to the Quantum Gateway as soon as he is loaded. Others have similar ideas as he sees others around the town bringing out their own vehicles, loading up their own trailers or trucks, and getting ready to take them to the gateway. And it's going to take a while to get there. However, it's never the event that causes the most casualties. It's always what happens after. Reaching the gate, the refugees are already beginning to flood into Earth. many of those protesting, some holding weapons trying to hold the refugees back. But as they see all sorts of devastation on the other side, to include all the dust and debris and the heat that is coming out, they back off. The patriarch is joined by other family members as they get in close. He halts the truck as they try to rush in and get close to find out what they can do. As they try to get closer, the dust and debris starts getting more and more present. It starts to get so thick you can't see anybody coming through the gate for the first 3 or 4 steps, and even then they drop to their knees trying to gasp, getting any type of air in. Other folks are running up, grabbing them and trying to get them away, and then there's a sudden explosion, and police immediately scramble to see if anyone's okay. The fire and magma begin to pour out as the police try to get close, trying to get anybody. A lot are caught in the eruption as there's a second explosion that comes through. This turned out to be some sort of flow from one of their volcanic eruptions, and it's just pouring in. Magma pours out and shoots all over the place, striking some in the face, some in the chest. They drop to the ground screaming for just a moment as the sudden heat melts whatever it touches. In the confusion, vehicles begin to explode. Those that were close to the gateway, those that are now touched by this magma that flows out. People try to run away, but the magma is too fast and flows in like water. Those that are caught in start screaming as they start burning on the way down. Chaos reigns supreme in that area. The patriarch is far enough away that he is not caught up by the blast, but he immediately turns back to his truck, runs back, and turns that gooseneck trailer around as the family jumps towards all the other survivors, trying to get them out, as the refugees don't know where to go. All they know is they can't stay here. Once the patriarch has everything turned around, he jumps out, opens the door, trying to aid everybody, and his family starts shoving people in. He runs back to the crowd out there, and he grabs everybody he can, focusing on picking up the children, too afraid to move, those freaking out. And as he runs, he sees a female that caught a piece of shrapnel into her leg, and he simply grabs her by one arm and runs back to the truck as fast as he can, stopping for absolutely no one. Everybody that they get is pushed in tight inside the cab of the truck. A mixture of red, blue, and green bodies are packed in there with the humans. Others are hastily tossed into the bed of the truck nearly overloaded. They see trouble as they see more of the magma pouring out. They can't stay. They have to get out. As soon as he gets in the driver's seat, he slams down the accelerator and he is gone. As he's driving away, he looks in the rearview mirrors and sees that the magma has completely wrapped around the base of the quantum gateway. It's starting to spark. He can't push the vehicle any farther, any faster, and there's a huge explosion. And the quantum gateway explodes and implodes in that moment. The resulting explosion is enough to kick up the trailer just enough where it shakes, and he can feel the trailer just about pull his truck off the road. But he keeps it going. And he keeps driving. He keeps driving until he finds someplace safe to be. Then he pulls over as they can't treat the injured inside the cab. Everybody is just too cramped. What he found out after surprised him. The Grace Fell that had actually reached his truck, or in this case his trailer, had actually climbed on and decided to use it as a way out, if nothing else, maybe to stay above the magma. But they were all sorts of messed up. Wounds were hastily treated, those that really needed it, and then they continued back to the farm. The children were immediately taken inside and given anything sweet, and a warm drink to just try and calm them down. He found out why there's almost no men around there as well. He couldn't understand why there's plenty of children, but there was no adult males, and as it turns out, for the Grazfell, it's always females and innocents first. He simply nodded as he realized, okay, yeah, I get that. I've heard it before. He then offloaded everything back into the house, and everybody started getting treatment. Everybody started getting food, and everyone tried to start making sense of what in the hell was going on. However, everything was just confusing. The reports that came in were always there, but they were sometimes contradictory, as some idiots online always wanted to be the first one to put something out. They didn't care if it was true or not, and it just confused everybody. But once the operations started, everybody realized that with recovery operations underway, the volcanic situation had calmed down, or some people joked around and said, it's cool now. But it's going to take a while. It will take a while for the planet itself to heal itself, but when it does, everything's going to be just fine. At least that's what they kept telling their new friends. On a small farm, they now have 21 new residents. The Gresfell were actually nervous. They thought perhaps that the patriarch and the others would only patch their wounds and send them away, because how would you possibly have enough food on such a small plot of land? And that's when all the humans kind of looked at each other and smiled. That strange, almost predatory grin that the Gresfell always found a little disturbing. They were told not to worry, and they were shown the pantries, the large pantries, and the basement, and everything else. They were told that farmers are always prepared for a lean year. That's just common sense. And because of that, there is enough food. They will not be eating lavishly by any chance, but they will be eating well. Once everybody's settled, the adults and adolescents start working on the farm itself, because it's going to take a lot of work. Within the next year, they're going to have everything set up to grow enough food, because they don't make enough money to purchase the food itself. They do have a fabricator, but most of the Gresfell won't eat out of it. It doesn't sit right, they say, even though no one's ever seen them vomit because they eat out of it. Children also have to work, but they get much more downtime with games and such, as young minds sometimes can't wrap their brains around all this. They can't accept it. So you need to distract them just a little bit. The neighbors, seeing this, offer food and even lodging in some cases, and on rare occasion, some of the Gresfell actually do accept it and end up living on these other small plots of land. As they work, others arrive, but not other Gresfell. These were humans. These were humans that made the patriarch and everybody in the family sit there and basically touch their weapons softly, just making sure it's there the entire time. The Gresfell couldn't understand why these men showed up on this land and immediately started walking to them, saying how they have a wonderful offer for them. But that's about the time where they're told, hey, get away from them. And as these men said, we just came here to talk. That's the moment when the patriarch drew his weapon, and so did everybody else. Of course, these ones who were now trespassing held up their hands like, we're not doing anything wrong. Yet they were told on no uncertain terms to fuck off. If they refuse, well, there's always the simpler way. Several times, these sharecroppers would come in and claim that they needed more hands, and they became insistent on many cases. However, they were not too happy when they realized that as soon as they showed up, there's always somebody in the woodline, someone they don't see, someone that the sensors can't pick up because of either camouflage or some sort of jammer or something like that. They didn't understand what was going on. However, as soon as the patriarch told them to go away or else, and they said, or else what? And he simply pointed at one of the lights on top of the vehicle, and the light was shot out from an area they couldn't see. That was when these not so nice humans actually did fuck off. Yet that wasn't the end of it. They got a hold of the town and eventually the state, and both showed up at one point and mentioned how it could be said that Gresfell orphans, since they are not actually born on of this planet, they could be considered property and could be sold at a high price. This immediately made several safeties click off. Undeterred, one of these bureaucrats in a fairly large group even said, you could put up with that boy over there leaving? I'm sure he could for the Right price, I'm sure. That's when a shot rang out. A shot that landed low. The medical tech actually ran up to him and tried to make sure that he wasn't going to bleed out. However, that is when the patriarch already had his weapon drawn out and told him, "Get your boss out of here. If I see you here again, I will kill you." Of course, the one that had made all those remarks about especially the young was screaming and yelling and cursing how everybody would regret this and that and the other thing. However, everybody realized that he's not going to be that pissed off for too long. With the current medical tech, you can regrow those in, what, 6 days? Although 6 days of being in very agonizing pain, but still, it should keep them away. Weapons were still drawn as the vehicles left, and that's when the patriarch simply spun around and he saw that all the children were confused. He tried to explain everything, but after hearing the reason, the young boy that had been almost purchased had a sudden realization. He realized what was going on, and he simply said, "Thank you, mister." That's when the patriarch just said, "You don't have to call me mister. Everybody just calls me Hank." For nearly a decade, the Graysfell work on the farms as they sell products to survive. They sell products to not only humans, but to other species to get more technology so that they can actually produce more, so that they can survive. And it's a round and around circle. And it's odd at first to see such beautiful beings in the fields, on the equipment, in the barns, at least at first, until humans once again do what they do best and adapt. But after reconstruction of their homeworld, the Graysfell all wanted to return. Well, at least most. They could now return to the life of beauty and luxury, that cushy life that they had on their home planet where everything was done for them. It was like looking at one of those old cartoons where even the machines, if you wanted to actually chew your food, would move your jaw for you. They didn't have to do much except look pretty. So they all returned. All but two. At that moment, as the transport landed, a female stands next to Hank. Not in her normal Graysfell clothing, which is an extremely light and definitely not durable fabric. One that's designed to be all for show, but she's not wearing that. Right now, she's in a white t-shirt and blue jeans, and her red skin is glistening in the sunlight. On the side opposite of Hank is another female Graysfell, a bit younger, but dressed pretty much the same. Her green flesh is also shining in the sunlight. It's as though the morning dew just never left them. And every single time it shimmers, it brings out more and more their beauty. They both wave as the transports lift off, causing a strange wind, which is oddly enough not a downdraft, to spray up. And this makes their long, silver blonde hair fly around just a little bit. The patriarch, Hank, even wipes it away from his eyes, like, not again. And then just lets it go and continues to wave by to everyone. The three just look up and watch and wave until the transport leaves line of sight as it's on its way to the new quantum gateway. Hank then turns to the two next to him and says, "So, are you two still heading to town today?" They, of course, look and agree in their own tongue, which is almost incomprehensible by human speech, but thanks to a new piece of technology he has inserted his ear canal, he can understand not only the words, but the meaning behind them. They agree that they're going to town, and they head towards the car that's waiting for them. Hank looks at them leave before he goes in the house and said, "Oh, shit. Lord have mercy, baby's got her blue jeans on." He laughs at himself as he turns back into the house and sees the new plot map on the wall, something he wanted there at all times so he understood what he actually owns. With a coin given by the Graysfell government to protect his own citizens for so long, he was able to extend his land over 300 acres now. He smiled again at this, as he knows that this is his. He's got the water rights, the mineral rights, the transportation rights. He has everything, and nobody can take this away from him, at least not legally. He looks out and he sees the vehicle leave. He sees the fields through the windows, and as he picks up his coffee cup, he steps back out on the porch, takes a sip, and goes, looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on this short story. Now, before I go, I need to say that today's winner is MTF Guard, with Brian Kemp and Alan Williams coming in second and third. I also need to send out some great big thank yous to the supporters of this channel, and they are Prozac and Pancakes, Steve Ilwood, MTF Guard, Guardian Sage, Erica Gem, SS Demon, and Brian Kemp. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.